I'm Haig Bagdasaryan, and on behalf of the San Francisco Bay Area chapter of the Armenian National Committee of America, I'm pleased to welcome you to our second virtual town hall as we provide forums for residents in the Bay Area and across the country to learn about government response and available resources in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, we're fortunate to have with us Joaquin Torres, who is the director of the San Francisco Office of Economic and Workforce Development, the OEWD, appointed by Mayor London Breed in 2018. In that role, he leverages resources across city departments to create opportunities for all and maximize equitable economic and social impact for the benefit of San Franciscan communities, residents, businesses, and neighborhoods. In pursuit of these goals, the OEWD provides citywide leadership and coordination for workforce development, business development, neighborhood economic development, and small business and development planning. Joaquin is also the president of the San Francisco Housing Authority Commission. Previously, he served in other leadership positions in the city, including as director of the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services. He's a graduate of Stanford University and NYU and lives in the Outer Mission with his wife. I should mention that the ANCA-SF Bay Area chapter has enjoyed working with Joaquin and his staff to find opportunities to strengthen economic relations between our community and the Republic of Armenia, which should come to no surprise to us, given that he gained a little familiarity growing up with Senator Art Torres, where his father was a strong champion for his Armenian American constituency in Montebello. But today, given that Joaquin and his team have been tasked to help mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on all San Franciscans, he's here to tell us about what they've been doing, about the available federal, state, and local programs and resources, and to answer as many of your questions as possible. Joaquin, thanks for taking the time to join us today for the ANC's second virtual town hall.
Thank you.
Can you start by just giving us a brief overview of the federal and state programs before we get into the specifics of what San Francisco is doing?
Absolutely. And Haig, I just wanted to say thank you so much for that very warm introduction. It's still surreal to be in this position, even more surreal, especially given the severity of the situation that we find ourselves in here in San Francisco, but also across the country, up and down California, and how grateful we all are for the extraordinary, powerful leadership that we have at the local level, at the homegrown level, at the federal level through our representatives, Jackie Speer and our speaker, Nancy Pelosi. I know that Congresswoman Speer was here doing a town hall last week, and I'm just really excited that I could be one of the next featured speakers the week after. All of our leadership, including from our homegrown Governor Gavin Newsom, who has been an extraordinary leader as well, and of course our Mayor London Breed, who I have just an absolute pleasure of serving in her administration. We're seeing extraordinary impacts across industries, many of which you know just deeply, in terms of the impacts in the restaurant community, in the general community at large, our healthcare systems and the stresses that have been placed on them, our businesses, our hospitality industry, tourism, all of it has had severe impacts. We're looking at a $1.7 billion over the next 2 years. Those are current conservative numbers. We may be getting an update as well, beginning as early as tomorrow, about where we're at here in San Francisco. What that means is that every single level of government and the resources that we bring to bear are essential during this time. Everything as little as a policy change that affects one small mom and pop shop to much larger trillion-dollar efforts that are happening at the federal level that make themselves available to our small business and business communities here, nonprofit communities, and workers here in San Francisco. I will go in a little bit, and I think maybe now might be the good time to maybe pull up some of those slides to share with folks. I don't know if I'll be able to see the slides at all.
You can't see the slides, but they're on.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay, give me 1 second, and I'll go to the first page so I can see where we're at. 1 second, everyone. It's the technical pieces are what are exciting. Okay, so essentially, if you can go to the next slide, 2.1 million Californians have applied for unemployment benefits, large employers. We've been receiving calls, over 2,000 since we started our hotlines here in San Francisco. And again, for anyone, I think one of the most important pieces that someone can take away from this, beyond the specifics of the numbers that are shared, is our website, oewd.org. That's oewd.org, where you can find in one place connectivity to phone numbers you can call to actually talk to a real human being that is able to answer your questions. In addition to information on the website, where you can also send emails for immediate responses that you will receive on the same day that you make them, as well as comprehensive information of what local, state, and federal resources are available for you as a business, as an employee, and as a nonprofit. We also highlight as well the Give to SF philanthropic campaign that the mayor and the city has launched to support 3 priority areas: housing stabilization, food security, and financial security for workers, immigrant workers in particular, and small businesses. That is extraordinarily important right now, in addition to the programming that I'm about to go over. So those folks, we receive notices for employers of 50 employees or more. We know just alone early this week that over 8,000 workers have been affected in March alone. That doesn't include all of the individuals who do not have to provide us with a notice for those with 50 employees or less. So we know that those numbers are significant. 14,000 businesses, 166,000 employees in San Francisco's directly and partially impacted sectors. Anecdotally, we know from talking with some fintech partners that of their community, they've seen sales drop approximately 70%. And of course, hotel rooms, which is no surprise to anyone who's been paying attention to the headlines, we've seen those occupancy rates dwindle by 90%. Some perspective there is that post 9/11, we saw about a 50% impact because, of course, people didn't want to travel by airplane, but they still traveled, and they traveled regionally. But now, with the shelter-in-place order, we know that that is not the case here in San Francisco. Next slide, please. So what have we done to support our business and nonprofit communities? Well, we've been hard at work. Back on March 11th, before the shelter-in-place order even began, we knew there were impacts most specifically connected with the misconception that this was a disease that was focused, or a virus that was focused primarily in the Asian community, in the Chinese community. And so Chinatowns across the country were experiencing severe discrimination through the lens of economic impacts, detrimental economic decline in activity in their communities. So we set up, we did an announcement where we denounced the discriminatory practices that people were engaging in, both from a personal level to an economic level. Shared that Chinatown at that time was still open for business, as it was across California and across the country, and announced a resiliency fund so that grants could be made available to merchants up to $10,000. We've made an additional investment in that program, an additional $1 million, so that we can serve over 200 small businesses in this area of micro enterprise, 5 employees or less, $2.5 million in gross receipts or less. We wanted to really kind of fill a gap for people that may not be able to access some larger federal programs that I'll go into in a moment. Also here locally, our hardship emergency loan program that we announced, a $9 million program there to support 0% interest loans up to $50,000. Both that program as well as our resiliency fund are going to be oversubscribed. That's something that we know. For the resiliency fund, the grant program, We can probably serve a little over 200 businesses. We've already received over 2,500 applications. For the hardship emergency program, we have a $9 million budget. We've already received over $120 million in applications asking and needing our support. We also announced in the beginning of the Resiliency Fund a tax and fee deferrals so that those who were on a unified bill would have their fees deferred by a quarter. And for those who were paying quarterly taxes, they would have those taxes deferred up until February of 2021 next year. In addition to that, an additional resource was our commercial eviction moratorium, so that similar to residents, small businesses, tenants do not have to worry at this moment in time about being evicted based on COVID-19 impacts. How we work through this when those bills come due in the future after the emergency order has been lifted, that will be a challenge for us moving forward into the future. And then finally, as I mentioned, our small business hotline. If we could go to the worker phase, the next slide, support for our workers. The mayor announced a $10 million investment to support our worker community here in San Francisco by providing resources to employers. Those resources would provide a 40-hour work week per employee, a cap of around $311,000 per business. The intent was to ensure that both a workplace could provide that sick leave, could afford to provide that sick leave. So those 40 hours do make a difference. Within 4 days of announcing that program, we were nearly fully subscribed. We're now oversubscribed by about 1.2 million of that entire fund. Over 782 applications that the city has received. So again, highlighting the extreme need that we're seeing here in the city that must be complemented by the efforts at the federal level. If we could, in terms of rapid response, meeting with employers right now, we've supported over 240 employees, over 40 businesses that we've had contact with to make sure that their workers knew what benefits were available to them. And of course, that included unemployment benefits at the state level. We're so happy that in addition to the cap of $450 a week that people could receive, an additional $600 has been made available per week, bringing that amount up to $1,050 per week. In addition to expanding who could receive those benefits, contract workers, gig workers, people new to the workforce that may not have had unemployment insurance benefits in the books previously, but can benefit from that resource now to deal and stabilize themselves, their families during this crisis. And then, of course, we're highlighting both at the local level, both our individual efforts about employers who are looking for workers right now on our jobs board, in addition to connecting our resources at the state level with Onward California, which is also a resource hub for us. And again, our workforce hotline. You've heard me talk, the next slide, please, in terms of Onward California, providing another connection point, paid sick and family leave expansion at the federal level. That relief is provided through tax credits for those that provide those paid sick leave hours and family leave hours for their employees. I've talked about unemployment. And then the federal relief programs for small businesses include, of course, the Paycheck Protection Program. We've been working very closely with the SBA, financial partners, to ensure that small businesses who are not just clients of those financial banks have a pathway to accessing those resources at the federal level. About $10,000 in grants can be provided, up to $10 million in forgivable loans can be provided on the condition of retaining your workforce with a cap of generally the number of workforce hours that you have over a 2-month period of time. Those are extraordinarily beneficial to our small business community. And then, of course, the long-standing economic injury disaster loan, about a 3.75% interest rate on that loan product, an extremely beneficial 2.75% interest rate for nonprofits. And then, of course, our local program that I mentioned earlier. So the final slide here is just the general information that we have at our office, again, our website. that you can see there. oewd.org is the simplest way to get there. If you want to just skip one more step, the /COVID-19 and those numbers and email addresses where you can get immediate, up-to-date information presented to you. So that is the general overview. It's a lot to take in, but I just can't reinforce exactly how important it is for us to continually direct people to our website so they know exactly what resources are made available, and also through those hotlines and through those email pages to be able to share with us what concerns you're hearing about directly so that we're aware as well. We're hearing it from all sides, all industries who are deeply focused at the advocacy level. We're currently working with our federal representatives on some additional pieces related to relief at the federal level through an upcoming fourth package. Some folks are calling it CARES 2, or a stimulus program that's now being held up by Republicans at the federal level, is what we understand, based on certain protective equipment desires that they have that they want included in the bill. I think I'll leave it with that for right now. I think it's a lot easier to kind of take some questions and respond in real time if that works for you, Haig.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for providing that terrific overview. And I'm sure our audience members or listeners have been well informed. Let me ask you a couple of follow-up questions. You mentioned that many of the programs, in terms of the applications received, have been oversubscribed. In terms of trying to accommodate as many folks as possible, are you going to be relying in part on federal or state level funding? Is there a possibility that the city will be able to allocate more towards that so you are able to meet the need? What do you anticipate?
I think reality is going to be that not everyone can be served. The need is simply too great in terms of these individual products. One thing that I did not mention is why that's so important for us to be making the rounds of what other products are out there. So, for example, Local Initiative Support Corporation, a partner of ours, they're providing up to $10,000 grants as well through an initial investment from Verizon. So we're making sure that people are aware of that. We're collecting all of those emails to make sure that people who don't benefit from our program, that they immediately are aware of those resources as well. The same thing is true next week. Facebook will be launching their application for their grant program as well, to be administered by a third party. But we are going to be doing a webinar with them next week, so we're fully aware about how to answer those questions. Absolutely, at the state and federal level, the level of movement that we've seen to deal with this unprecedented crisis is extraordinary. Folks at the local level are deeply, deeply aware of those efforts at both the state level, at the federal level. And as we're having more conversations around expansion of recovery again, dealing with what a phased approach will look like for lifting shelter in place, which is something that we need to be thinking about today. You saw the governor's announcement about the principles and framework that he has released in terms of when we will get to reopening and in what manner. Life does not go back to normal in a normal sense. There is a new normal that we're going to have to prepare for. So the reason I talk about that is because some folks are thinking about resources that we're going to need for recovery as well. How do we get people open up again? For example, the restaurant, what are their startup costs going to be again when they have to open up, given that they lost all of that inventory trying to open up again? That's just one simple example. We're going to be advocating for resources continually at the state and federal levels. We're going to be working with our partners to make sure that access is equitable. One of the things that we're working on right now is ensuring that this second $1 million allocation, we're taking a closer look, bringing in more partners, having quick conversations, making sure people understand that we want to ensure both geographic and cultural equity in who benefits from these programs, but also getting these dollars out the door as soon as possible. So yes, it is going to take a lot more resources to meet the need and meet the demand. We're doing as much as we can to expand services and finding out every way where we can provide some level of relief to folks. But the realities is that people are going to be severely, severely impacted. We are going to lose some businesses. And so we need to be very, very conscious of that moving forward. It is a horrible reality to have to speak, but it is one that we need to be prepared for.
Thank you, Joaquin. And I would urge our listeners to submit your questions because Joaquin does have a few more minutes with us, and we want to try to get all the questions answered. One issue which has come up is some confusion regarding what essential services are, what's included. Is that something you can kind of shed some light on? Because only essential services should be operating right now under the current order from the mayor and the governor. So can you dispel some of the myths related to that?
Certainly. Just generally, and I'll read a little bit here that I have with regards to that. If it feels like an essential service, it is. If it doesn't feel like an essential service, most likely it's not. But for you to go to the SF.gov website and look up essential services, you can get a full list of all of the questions, nitty-gritty details. Every single day, we submit questions to the city attorney's office asking about, is my business essential? We ask questions about in-home care, so the workers who are now at home, balancing out how people and parents are able to juggle very real work schedules that they're providing remotely, so they can have some in-home care to take care of their children while they're doing their work when that's an option for them. While also balancing the very real shelter-in-place social distancing practices that are essential, washing your hands, not touching your face, maintaining clean practices in your home consistently, especially when and if you're going outside to get those essential services. Healthcare, your grocery stores, your food markets, your food delivery, hardware, transportation and repair shops, transit companies, your plumbers, your exterminators, your electricians, businesses providing mailing and shipping services, including those post office boxes, your laundromats, your dry cleaners, your laundry service providers, restaurants for takeout only, for delivery only, businesses that supply other essential businesses with resources are allowed to function, again, with social distancing guidelines in place, home-based care, residential facilities and shelter spaces, those workers that will be working at the hotels that will be housing our first responders. 7,000 rooms is what we're looking at contracting. In addition to our disaster care workers and other workers at the hotels that we'll be potentially contracting with to supplement that workforce need, child care facilities as well. So those are just some of the examples there, but I do encourage you to go to, you can simply Google SF.gov, business is essential, is my business essential, and it will lead you to that website. And it's certainly very easy to find on the COVID-19, just click on that on the SF.gov website. Constantly new information updated all the time.
Thank you again. There are many Armenian and non-Armenian nonprofits who've been incredibly impacted. So many fundraisers have had to be canceled because of the earlier restrictions, even before the state shelter-in-place orders came in. There were the admonitions regarding large gatherings, and it's unclear. I mean, that may be the very last piece that would normalize in terms of allowing larger gatherings, whether we're talking about sporting events, entertainment, or fundraising events. So are there resources that are more specifically tailored to nonprofits, Joaquin?
Yes. It's important to remember that the payroll protection program at the SBA level, those resources are also intended for nonprofits. If you are a nonprofit and you're in need of stabilization resources as your organization continues to function, please do reach out to your financial institutions, ask those questions. If you need additional support in doing so, please do visit our website, reach out to us directly so that you can get answers to those questions. Make use of those resources at the federal level. As astounding as they are nearly depleted in terms of what resources have been made available. My understanding is I want to say there's only there's about $40 billion, I believe, left in the accounts. People, as of this morning, were even saying that we think that by Thursday of this week, those accounts could be depleted as well. Please do get your applications in. Don't wait. allow the lenders to ask the questions. You make sure that you get those applications in and work with your partners to do so. And again, if you need support in accessing alternative sources that may be lenders, please do reach out to look at our website. You'll see some guidance there, in addition to reaching out by phone or email to get some quick answers to your questions. In terms of fundraising, there are so many people that are doing what we're doing right now, staying online. I was just looking at a theater company that moved from what was going to be normally their large gala in a hotel to an online experience to make sure that people are still giving to these organizations. People absolutely need the public support in maintaining that giving as people are able to right now. Everyone is feeling the squeeze, and those who are not are giving. We need them to continue to do so. Another piece to highlight is that if you don't think you really need the resources, I think it's a very small minority of people right now. Don't take advantage of them. If you believe that you can hold out, please do. Because we are living with limited resources, and we want to be sure people can access them who truly need it. We expanded a $2.5 million allocation to support arts organizations and working artists. There were some folks who were saying they were going to apply for those dollars. We would say to them, please, if you don't really need it, don't apply. If you can benefit from unemployment insurance or otherwise, where some folks may not, including our immigrant families, and others with complicated citizenship status who are nervous about engaging with the federal government, please do think of them when you're accessing those resources. We're trying to take care of each other here. So that's another thing to remember as well.
My apologies, some technical issues. Thanks again, Joaquin.
Absolutely.
Going to take a couple of questions from our listeners, but I had one additional one. And I really appreciate the fact that you're sharing the resources available, making your office available. Once again, the website was oewd.org. San Franciscans can go to that website to find out what some of the available resources are. But I'm wondering.
We break that up. Please, we break that up into three sections in particular. Again, for businesses, for employees, and for nonprofits, so you can get guidance there. Another real reality, though, is that, again, as I mentioned, $1.7 billion over 2 years, being conservative. So the means that we have to continue supporting the community will change. So every resource matters.
Thank you. Are there other city agencies or state level agencies that are also providing resources? Because I imagine that you're getting flooded, so that you're aware of. Just can you name a few that might be good resources?
Sure. What I would say is go to the website, go to oewd.org. You'll find the full list there. And again, if there's some other opportunities that either you become aware of that you want to share that you don't see there, or you have questions about the ones that are there, please do call or email us.
Okay. We do have a question from one of our listeners, Nora Deryayan Shirikian from the East Bay, asks, we applied for SBA economic injury disaster loan, but didn't hear from them yet. How long should she expect them to take?
It depends on your lending institution. It really does require you at times to reach out to folks. I know it's very frustrating. It's something that we've highlighted for all of the financial partners. I wish I had an answer. Some folks it takes a few days for, and some folks it feels like there's just simply a void and an echo and a dark chamber, and no one knows if your application is being heard or reviewed. We've been sharing those same sentiments with financial institutions. Just last Friday, our assessor recorder and our treasurer reached out in a joint letter to all of the financial institutions to ask those basic questions. How are you communicating? Who are you accepting? Give us the information, give us the data so we know best how to fill the gap with you, and also to highlight what we're hearing as well, since you're focused on how to process those applications. So I wish I had a better answer. I don't. I honestly don't. It varies from institution to institution.
Well, thank you, Joaquin. We'll take a couple more questions if you have the time.
Absolutely, please.
So Roxanne Makasjan from San Francisco asks, what if you're a small business owner and you're the only employee? Do these resources still apply?
Yes, they do. There's been some confusion around this. What we want to do is, for sole proprietors, make sure that you also as well are applying for these loan programs. They are intended to benefit you as well. The conversations, depending on the intricacy of your business, if you list yourself as the employee of the business itself, of course that applies. So really do talk to your lenders, ask them those very specific questions, and if you're not able to reach folks, don't wait, apply.
Thank you, Joaquin. One last question. Yes.
Just when we have, because this is an area of interest for us, we are going to be speaking with the SBA again tomorrow to ask about if we can do an additional webinar around sole proprietors to answer some of these questions as well.
Okay. Well, we will broadcast that information as soon as it's available so that everyone can listen in and find out what the developments are. In the meantime, I'll just have one final question from a listener. This is Hachik Tazian in San Mateo asking, can you please explain in more detail, if possible, the unemployment benefits afforded to self-employed individuals or 1099 employees who traditionally do not qualify for benefits? I think you've answered it in part from the last question, but is there anything more you could add to address that more specific concern?
Certainly. We're in constant conversation with EDD at the state level, the employment division at the state government. There have been some, and I don't fully know in real time right now if these conflicting messages have been resolved yet. But independent contractors, self-employed individuals who have been impacted by COVID should be able to access those resources. That's what they're intended to do, which is also why we expanded and advocated to expand who those benefits could be applied towards. So please do apply at the state level so that you are able to access those funds. It's still going to be a pain getting through the bureaucracy, although Gavin Newsom redeployed about 850 employees specifically to address this issue, to start moving a little bit faster in terms of responses. So do know, and this is an issue that's happening not only here in California, but also in New York as well. We've been learning about that at the state level in New York too. I hope that answers enough of the specifics of that question there. But if there is even a sliver of a doubt, just go and apply for those funds so that you can make use of them.
Thank you, Joaquin, and thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here today. We're going to end our program here, but we really appreciate having you join us today to benefit from the information shared by Joaquin. We're going to endeavor the ANCA San Francisco Bay Area chapter, as well as our fellow organizations, the ANCA Western Region and other chapters, are endeavoring to bring as much information to you as possible in these difficult days. So please stay tuned and follow us on Facebook. And again, thank you for joining us tonight.
It's a very huge pleasure to have been with you tonight at ANCA, and I just am deeply grateful for time to speak to you, the Armenian community. You are so important for our vitality, for our vibrancy, for our culture here in San Francisco and beyond. And I'm just honored to be able to speak with all of you tonight. So thank you.
Thank you, Joaquin. Good night.
Good night.